When a Sigma male stops explaining himself, it's not arrogance, it's evolution. He's done justifying his silence, his distance, and his decisions to people who never really listened in the first place. The moment he stops over-explaining, he reclaims his power. Because every time he used to explain himself, he was really seeking understanding from minds that only wanted control. Now, he doesn't argue, he just acts and lets results speak. That shift changes everything. His absence starts to speak louder than his presence. His silence becomes unsettling. People begin to notice what they lost, not because he said a word, but because he finally stopped saying anything at all. That's when his calm becomes intimidating. That's when his energy changes the room. This isn't pride, it's clarity. The Sigma male learns that the moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you stop giving people power over your peace. You realize that real strength doesn't need to be understood. It just needs to be felt. If this spoke to you, comment below. When a Sigma male stops explaining himself, everything changes. And make sure to subscribe to UltraWise, because here, silence speaks louder than words. He realizes explanation is a form of validation. When a Sigma male finally understands that constant explanation is just disguised validation seeking, everything shifts. For years, he might have tried to justify his silence, his distance, or his choices, hoping others would see his intentions the right way. But eventually he realizes that explaining himself is simply giving people permission to judge him. Every explanation is an invitation for misunderstanding, and every defense only proves he still cares about opinions that don't matter. That's when he stops. He learns that people who truly understand him don't need explanations, and those who demand them will never be satisfied. It's a cycle of wasted energy, one where his peace is constantly traded for temporary acceptance. Once the Sigma male steps out of that loop, he starts to see clearly. The need to explain is rooted in insecurity, and silence is rooted in confidence. The more he grows, the less he feels the urge to make people comfortable with his truth. Instead of talking, he lets results speak. Instead of proving his worth, he moves with quiet assurance. He becomes so grounded in who he is that misunderstanding no longer feels like an attack. It feels like a filter that separates who belongs and who doesn't. His energy becomes calm, focused, and unbothered. That's the real shift in power. Because when a Sigma male no longer explains himself, he's no longer performing for approval. He's living for clarity, not consensus. And that's when people start noticing. Not because he shouted his truth, but because he finally stopped justifying it. He understands silence holds more power than words. The Sigma male eventually realizes that silence can do what words never could: reveal truth, command respect, and maintain control. He learns that every time he argues or explains, he's giving others access to his energy. But when he goes silent, that access disappears. The moment he withholds his words, the dynamic shifts completely. People who once fed on his reactions start feeling powerless because they can no longer predict or provoke him. That's when his silence becomes his greatest weapon. He understands that most people talk to defend their ego, not to find truth. They argue to be right, not to resolve. So instead of getting dragged into emotional debates or pointless explanations, the Sigma male stays quiet and observes. He watches how people reveal their real intentions when faced with silence, how manipulation turns into panic, how confidence turns into insecurity, how fake strength starts to crumble without attention. His silence exposes people faster than confrontation ever could. It's not indifference, it's discipline. The Sigma male uses silence as a filter to separate those who seek understanding from those who crave control. He's learned that the loudest person in the room usually has the least to say, and the calmest one holds all the power. His composure becomes unnerving to others because they can't read him, can't predict him, and can't manipulate what they can't engage. That mystery, that restraint commands respect effortlessly. In silence, he sees more, feels more, and processes deeper. Every pause becomes a tool for understanding patterns, motives, and hidden agendas. He doesn't need to rush to respond because he's already 3 steps ahead in his mind. By the time others are trying to win the argument, he's already understood the truth and chosen not to waste energy proving it. Over time, his silence becomes synonymous with strength. People start realizing that when he doesn't respond, it's not because he's weak, it's because he's done. His silence speaks volumes, saying everything words could never capture: control, confidence, and detachment. That's why silence, for the Sigma male, is never empty. It's full of meaning, awareness, and intent. And when he finally does decide to speak, everyone listens, because they know his words were forged in thought, not impulse. He stops seeking approval from the unaware. At some point, the Sigma male realizes that most people judge from the surface, not from depth, not from truth, and certainly not from understanding. He sees how society rewards noise over wisdom, conformity over individuality, and ego over substance. For years, he might have tried to fit in, to explain himself, to be understood, but eventually he reaches a point where he no longer cares to be seen by those who can't see clearly. Approval from the unaware no longer feels like validation, it feels like compromise. He learns that seeking approval from shallow minds is a trap that keeps powerful people small. The more he tried to prove himself, the more he felt drained, misunderstood, and disconnected from his real path. So he stops trying altogether. Instead of chasing validation, he focuses on alignment, doing what feels right to him, not what earns applause. He replaces external approval with internal conviction, knowing that peace lasts longer than praise ever could. The Sigma male becomes comfortable being misunderstood. He realizes that the people who criticize him often do so from fear or projection, not truth. They fear what they don't understand. Independence, emotional control, silence, and self-sufficiency. To them, his calm detachment looks like arrogance. His focus looks like coldness. But he no longer needs to correct their perception. Their confusion is not his problem. Once he detaches from that need for approval, his confidence shifts from external to internal. He starts trusting his own judgment more than anyone else's. The world's noise fades into the background, and his mind becomes his compass. He stops performing and starts living with purpose. Every decision is now made from awareness, not pressure. And here's the paradox. The moment he stops seeking approval, he starts earning real respect. People begin to sense something different about him, a quiet certainty that can't be shaken by opinions. He's no longer influenced by trends, expectations, or group validation. His authenticity becomes his armor, and his solitude becomes his strength. That's the true transformation. The Sigma male no longer needs to be understood to feel secure. He understands himself. And that's all the validation he'll ever need. He lets actions speak louder than justifications. The Sigma male eventually learns that explaining himself to people who don't truly listen is a waste of energy. Words can be twisted, ignored, or forgotten, but actions are undeniable. Instead of defending his choices or trying to convince others of his intentions, he lets results do the talking. He realizes that silence paired with consistency carries more weight than endless explanations ever could. People may doubt his motives, question his methods, or misjudge his character, but once they see what he builds, their opinions stop mattering. He stops trying to make people understand why he does what he does. The need to justify himself fades as he grows more self-assured. He knows his path is unique. Not everyone will understand it, And that's fine. While others waste time debating and seeking validation, he's too focused on execution. His actions become his message, and his results become his defense. Every project finished, every boundary enforced, every decision followed through speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. When he moves this way, something interesting happens. People start taking him more seriously. His silence starts to command respect. They realize he's not bluffing or seeking approval, he's simply following through. His reliability and calm consistency become his reputation. Even those who once doubted him can't argue with the outcomes he creates. The Sigma male knows that justifying himself gives others control. It invites them to question his direction, his motives, and his worth. But when he lets his work speak, there's nothing left to debate. The results stand as proof of his discipline, his vision, and his authenticity. He no longer tells people who he is, he shows them. In a world full of talkers, he chooses to move in silence. His decisions are made without announcement. His goals pursued without noise. When success comes, it comes quietly, yet it shakes everything around him. That's because his power doesn't come from argument, it comes from action. The Sigma male doesn't seek to be understood anymore, he seeks to be effective. And the moment he stops explaining and starts executing, everything changes. People stop asking for proof. Because his presence, his progress, and his peace are the proof. He learns that misunderstanding is a filter, not a problem. At some point, the Sigma male realizes that being misunderstood isn't a flaw. It's a form of protection. In a world obsessed with quick judgments and shallow opinions, he understands that not everyone is meant to get him. In fact, the ones who rush to label him usually expose themselves first. He stops taking misunderstanding personally and starts seeing it for what it truly is. A natural filter that keeps the wrong people away. For years, he may have wasted energy trying to explain his intentions to people who had already decided what to believe. He tried to prove he wasn't cold, arrogant, or distant, just focused and private. But no matter how clearly he spoke, they only heard what fit their narrative. Eventually, he understood the truth. Those who are committed to misunderstanding you will never hear your truth anyway. So he stopped performing for them. Instead of fighting to be understood, he focuses on staying authentic. He knows that genuine people will eventually see his intentions without needing long explanations. The ones who misunderstand him by choice, he lets them go. Because the Sigma male no longer sees rejection or misjudgment as loss, he sees it as direction. Every person who misreads him makes space for someone who recognizes his value without needing constant explanation. This shift changes everything. He stops defending his character and starts protecting his peace. Misunderstanding no longer stings. It saves time. It keeps drama, manipulation, and insecurity far from his circle. The Sigma male learns that the more mysterious he remains, the more filtered his environment becomes. Only those with emotional depth, awareness, and maturity can truly connect with him. What others see as isolation, he sees as refinement. He doesn't need a crowd to validate who he is, he only needs clarity about who's genuine. And once he embraces that, he becomes untouchable. Because while others chase being liked by everyone, the Sigma male values being understood by a few and trusted by himself. That's when misunderstanding transforms from something painful into something powerful. It stops being a problem to fix and becomes a boundary that protects his peace. He values inner peace over being right. The Sigma male eventually learns that being right isn't always worth the cost of his peace. He spent enough time in pointless debates trying to prove his logic, defend his intentions, or clarify his silence, only to realize that most people don't want truth. They want validation. They don't listen to understand, they listen to react. And once he sees that, he stops wasting his breath trying to win arguments that don't lead anywhere. He understands that peace is a far greater victory than being right in the eyes of people who refuse to see clearly. So instead of explaining, correcting, or convincing, he simply withdraws. He lets people believe whatever helps them sleep at night. His calmness isn't surrender, it's wisdom. He knows that walking away from conflict doesn't mean losing. It means refusing to hand over control of his energy. This mindset gives him an unmatched sense of freedom. He doesn't need the last word because he already knows his truth. He doesn't need recognition because he's grounded in self-awareness. The more he values peace, the more unstoppable he becomes. While others burn themselves out defending fragile egos, the Sigma male conserves his strength for things that actually matter: his goals, his purpose, and his personal evolution. He also sees that most people argue from emotion, not clarity. Trying to win with them only leads to frustration. So he steps back, lets silence do the talking, and allows time to reveal what words never could. His restraint becomes a form of control, calm, quiet, and unshakable. By choosing peace over being right, the Sigma male rises above the noise. He stops engaging in drama and starts mastering detachment. He understands that the truth doesn't need to be defended, it reveals itself over time. And every moment he doesn't spend arguing, he invests in something far more powerful: his focus and emotional stability. That's why his peace feels intimidating to others. It's not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. Because when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, you become untouchable. And that's the space where the Sigma male truly thrives: calm, grounded, and completely in control. He builds authority through composure, not conversation. The Sigma male doesn't lead through loud words or endless explanations. He leads through presence. His authority doesn't come from how much he talks, but from how little he reacts. While others try to assert dominance by raising their voices, he commands respect by mastering silence. People sense it instinctively. His calm energy feels stronger than anyone's noise. He's learned the true authority comes from composure, not control. When everyone else is arguing, panicking, or chasing approval, the Sigma male remains still. That stillness isn't passivity, it's power. It shows that he's grounded, self-assured, and unaffected by chaos. And in a world full of impulsive egos, that calmness becomes magnetic. People start to look to him for stability, without him ever asking for it. He knows that the loudest person in the room is rarely the most confident one. Real power doesn't need to shout. It speaks through energy, not volume. Every time he maintains composure in tense moments, he's silently establishing dominance. He proves he's in control not by forcing others to follow, but by showing he doesn't need to. This quiet authority is why the Sigma male naturally stands apart. His discipline makes him reliable, his silence makes people curious, and his restraint earns him respect, even from those who don't understand him. When he finally does speak, people listen, not because he demands attention, but because he's already earned it through consistency. He understands that composure builds credibility faster than persuasion. Anyone can talk. Few can remain calm under pressure. That's what separates him from the rest. His presence alone communicates confidence, strength, and direction, the same qualities that others try to project through words. In the end, the Sigma male doesn't compete for authority, he becomes it. Not by debating, not by showing off, but by proving through his behavior that he's built differently. Because real leadership isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. And once he does that, his silence carries more influence than any speech ever could. He becomes untouchable when he no longer needs to be understood. The Sigma male reaches his peak strength the moment he stops needing people to understand him. He no longer wastes energy explaining his intentions, proving his value, or defending his decisions. He realizes that most people can only meet him at the level of their own awareness, and expecting them to grasp his mindset is a guaranteed source of frustration. So instead of seeking validation through understanding, he embraces solitude, mystery, and self-assurance. He knows that being misunderstood is the price of individuality. The more authentic and self-contained he becomes, the less people relate to him. But that no longer bothers him. It empowers him. While others bend their truth to fit in, he stays rooted in his own. He's not chasing acceptance, approval, or belonging. He's chasing growth, discipline, and freedom. And in doing so, he becomes something rare. A man who moves entirely by his own design. Once he stops needing to be understood, the noise of judgment loses its grip. He no longer reacts to opinions or doubts. People can misinterpret his silence, his distance, even his motives. And he remains calm, knowing that truth doesn't need to shout. That kind of emotional independence is what makes him truly untouchable. Because when no one has power over how you feel or what you believe about yourself, no one can control you. This mindset shifts his entire reality. Relationships become simpler, priorities become clearer, and peace becomes his default state. He learns that not explaining himself doesn't mean arrogance. It means emotional maturity. It means he's done living for others' approval and ready to live according to his own values. People might still misunderstand him, call him cold, detached, or distant. But that's fine. He's not here to be understood. He's here to evolve. The Sigma male walks through life grounded in quiet confidence, unshaken by opinions, and uninterested in validation. And that's when he becomes truly powerful. When misunderstanding no longer feels like isolation but liberation. Because the moment you no longer need to be understood, you finally become free. When a Sigma male stops explaining himself, the world starts to shift around him. People who once took advantage of his patience begin to feel uneasy. Those who doubted him start to notice his quiet confidence. And the ones who never listened finally realize they lost access to something rare. A man who no longer needs approval to move forward. By choosing silence over justification, he reclaims his energy, his focus, and his freedom. He no longer argues, defends, or seeks permission. His peace becomes his power. Because the Sigma male understands that true dominance doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being untouchable, grounded, and completely in control of himself. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to UltraWise, like this video, and comment "I move in silence." Because once you stop explaining yourself, everything and everyone begins to reveal their true nature.